I'm Beverly Carbonella, and I moved to New Haven in the 60s, late 50s. I fell in love with Wooster Square because it reminded me of Brooklyn. And as we walked across town, we came down Court Street and saw the park. And there was, believe it or not, there was an Italian band playing Italian songs and a couple of operatic singers when we came through the park. And I thought, oh my, what is this? And so then we moved here and I fell in love with number 20. It was a mess, a total mess. And I think we paid $36,000 for it, as I recall, and began the restoration. I mean, we couldn't live in it for the first 6 months or so. Well, I was so excited about finally getting this house. I was beside myself. And it had black shades on the windows, linoleum on the floors, and you had really no clue as to what was there. Excuse me. And so I was so excited, I called Mrs. Casadento and said, oh, we closed, we want you to come in, we're going to celebrate. My husband wasn't as excited about it as I was, but he was okay with it. And so she came in and there was nothing there, so she sat on a box, and we were all sitting around on boxes, and I was out of my mind with excitement. And my mother-in-law began to cry, and I thought she was crying because she was so happy. And I said, oh, Marion, don't let it upset you. And she said, I worked all my life to get out of Wooster Square. Sonny is a lawyer, and you moved back into this slum? And I was stunned. What am I going to tell my friends? And I said, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Yeah, she thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to her son. That was her impression. Well, it was the impression of a lot of people. The original settlers some of them had settled in Wooster Square, and they had built the mansions all around the park. Then the factories imported, or how they got here I don't really know, but a lot of Italian people came into Wooster Square to work at the factories. And so they would all live in Lion Street or one of the streets over there. And I'm told, that the original owners did not like the fact that their factory workers were living a block away because they were on the periphery of the square. That's what I was told. And so then they moved to the other side of New Haven, over to St. Ronan Street, Prospect Street. And then the Italians all chipped in. Sometimes 10, 12 people would own one house. And so it became Little Italy. And that's how it was known.
So 20 Academy Street used to be the Italian consulate.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
But, yeah, it was the consulate. Well, I have the plaque on the house that states that it was the Italian consulate. And that was because, of course, there were so many Italians living here. They didn't speak English, they didn't write, they didn't drive, so they needed, some help. And that's why when you go in, there's two doors. The one on the left was his office, and we have sliding doors that closed it off, and then you go into the main house. We became a historic district, the first one in New Haven, and the pictures on the poster show the parade. And then I was a commissioner, along with Deb Townsend, and Jimmy Scarrett, who was a landscape architect for the city of New Haven, suggested one day that we plant cherry trees around the green, around the park. which we voted upon and the city approved. And so it was decided to plant 70 trees around the green.
And
Yes. Well, it was photographers were coming from the register to take a photograph of the cherry trees, and there weren't any blooms on the trees. So I had been at the Edward Malley Company. I had worked also as a window dresser. So I went to Marvin Display and bought a whole bunch of flowers that looked like cherry blossoms, which was fortunate that he had them, and invisible wire. And I came back and they hadn't arrived yet, so I wired them all to the tree, one tree. And that was the picture that was in the paper the next day. You know, blossoms, I said it was deceiving because if anyone wanted to come and see the blossoms, there weren't any. But it got us a lot of publicity. I spent 50 years contributing to various things. And I love it so much, I just can't tell you. And I'm very proud that the Historic Association, that's the Wooster Square Historic Association, is here to keep an eye on everything. You know, people kid me. They call me the Queen of Wooster Square, or whatever, you know. But it's been a long time. It's 50 years. So it's just been a great experience.